Hi, my name is Emily Cook. I am the digital programs manager here at Creative Connector, and I just want to go over a little bit of stuff before uh, we get started. Making an online community space accessible and safe is a collaborative effort, and we hope you'll help us out. We created a set of values and principles below to principles to guide us, and ask that you honor these values in participating in the space. The community space, and we'd love your help to make it as safe as possible for everyone here. Please um, state your name when you begin speaking and end of thought when you're done speaking. This both helps us with the transcript and helps folks who are not receiving visual cues. Practice empathy. Be thoughtful with your words and actions and help us to cultivate a space free from judgment, bullying, or shame. Be respectful of others' journeys. Be open to differing viewpoints and experiences. It's up to you how you want to disclose and celebrate your identity, as well as to respect how others do that. Treat others how you'd like to be treated. Be kind when giving and accepting feedback. Consider how you can be supportive and model behaviors you want to see in others. Be mindful of others' emotional safeties. Experiences of disability and ableism can be really tough, and many of us come to this space with different histories of trauma. The purpose of these programs is to connect in a space with other deaf and disabled artists, and while being in connection with each other can be healing, um, guest artists are peers who come to the space with their own histories and experiences, and they cannot provide emotional support that replaces therapy from a trained professional. In support of this, we've got an active listener here today. Um, an active listener is a trauma-informed, de-escalation skilled individuals that creates a safe space for others to express emotional challenges in a particular setting. The overall goal of an active listener is to provide appropriate, non-clinical feedback and emotional support to others. If you need emotional support during the workshop, there's going to be a few different options, and I'll go over these again when we've got more people in the group. So I've created a breakout room that's like an alternative space to the main space. You're welcome to go into that space if you're having trouble with any of the content in the space. I'd also ask that you message me or Rain to ask if you want someone to follow you into that space. Um, you can also message Rain directly through the chat or uh, through the phone number that Rain will put into the chat. And then you're welcome to return to the space when you're feeling more comfortable. And you can message me. I shared with you the approximate timing of things, but I can definitely message you when a certain aspect um, of the programming is finished or over that you're having trouble with. Um, does anyone have any questions about that in particular? And we can talk about that a little bit more once we get started. Um, does anyone have any thoughts or questions? Oh, here's someone. Okay. This is a space will be shaped collectively with you and everyone here. Um, we would also like to acknowledge that although we're all calling in from many parts of the world, the host organization, Creative Connector, is calling in from Pacaronto, which is the Mohawk name for Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including um, the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and it's now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered under Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, a treaty that has been broken many times. And it also operates under the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt, which is a treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe, a mutual agreement between nations for sharing land and resources. But importantly, this agreement states that all on this land have a responsibility to care for the land and for those who live here. Iris Xie, they, them, theirs, is a disabled, neurodivergent, queer, trans, non-binary, second generation, Chinese American, multidisciplinary writer, artist, and designer from the Bay Area, currently living in Davis, California. Iris is
So sorry, Emily.
poetry games, which is why we're all here, solo live action role playing games, and objects that explore neurodivergence and invisibilized disability through the framework of technoscience and disability justice. Their knowing making practice centers on finding rest and self trust while traversing liminality through discovering their political identities as a disabled, queer, trans person of color. I'm going to pass it over now to Iris, and we're going to do some check ins. And yeah, that's
Hi.
all yours, Iris.
Hi, everyone. Also, Emily, I think the phone scared you. I'm Chinese American, not Chinese Canadian. So I just wanted to clarify that. Um,
Yes, good point. I felt like I didn't like, I think words came out of my mouth and I was like not even like
oh,
hearing the words.
no, I mean, I would love to meet an Irish who's Chinese Canadian sometime, so no worries. But hi everyone, my name's Iris. I use they them pronouns. Thank you for joining with me on this Friday afternoon. Today we're gonna go for a bit of a slower paced workshop, an acknowledgement that with seasons changing and what is going on in the world globally and also locally and personally, whatever in your life, sometimes it's nice on Friday to have rest. And so I'm going to get started on the presentation, and we're going to talk a little bit about lyric games and play some very gentle games today. So let me share my screen. So, okay. Um, and like for let's see. Oh, sorry. What I slideshow. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Okay. So today, like the title is called Poetics of Stimming, Introduction to Lyric Games. So basically, and this question maybe just like, if like one or two people like in the chat like want to share, like when you think of like a game, like what are some examples? So I have some examples here, like board games with rules like Monopoly, Risk, Settlers of Catan. There are also video games of different genres, Stardew Valley, League of Legends. I'm wondering if like, maybe you could just put in like one or two like games you have played, either like a board game or like a video game or any kind of game. Even a playground game. Like if you just want to put in like one or two things in the chat and I can read it out loud. Um, but if you think of any other examples, feel free to put in the chat and I will read them out later. Um, so basically, one of the games that I have basically been very attached to as both as a game designer and as an art form, and also just as like a disabled person, I love lyric games. Lyric games are an experimental emerging genre with multiple entry points. They challenge existing game structures by providing new ways of immersion and guided playfulness that pushes against existing structures. I like to say that the mechanics are malleable. So, for example, like, they can have dice or no dice, stats, tools, objects. It's completely malleable. It's how you want to design the experience. Many are solo games, and they also are not required to be played in a group setting, although you can. I did write a group one for us today. And they're also very experimental and they go against conventional form. A lot of times what you see in lyric games, if you search up on itch.io, which is an online shared marketplace for games or visual art or stuff like that. Several of them are called solo journaling games. So think of like when you're journaling, except that and then there's prompts, right? But in those prompts there are instructions you can play. Or you could read a poem, but yet there's instructions you can act on, which I'll show in examples later in this presentation. And also, thanks to John Harness and Adira Slattery for conversations and helping define these, because it's such an emergent genre. Um, let's see. Oh, sorry. What? Oh, sorry. So I'm going to introduce a few different entry points and examples of where people might, be able to grip onto. And, it's okay if not everyone's familiar with all of these. I'm just trying to reach like, a varied audience. So there are like, interactive fiction slash visual novels. So when you think about like, oh, sorry. When you think about for interactive fiction, you can think about like choose your own adventure games, right? Where you like flip the page and then it's like, oh, do I go down this tunnel or do I go to this island? And you see like different endings you can have. Um, there's also video game versions of interactive fiction. I list two other examples here. Dream Daddy, where it's like, well, actually, sorry. Technically, these are visual novels. So, and like a more graphic based storyline version is like visual novels where it's like you play meeting several characters and there are many different variations. So like Dream Daddy is about like, you meet all these dads and you figure out which one you want to date. As like a queer person. Or there's like Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, where it's like you play as a lawyer and you have to do investigations for very campy storylines. There's the common thing in all of these is that there's multiple ways to engage in a storyline with multiple different styles of mechanics. And this is like commercially what a lot of people are exposed to. Another reference point is that Yoko Ono has this really fantastic art book called Grapefruit. And there's basically a movement called the Fluxus movement, I think back in like the 60s or 70s, I can't remember too well, where essentially they wanted to break the idea of like art objects as being something you can't touch or play with, right? And so Yoko Ono basically created this book called Grapefruit, where there's like this amazing kind of like poetry with like kind of instructions and these little like typeset cards. So I'll read this one out loud, called Conversation Piece. Bandage any part of your body. If people ask about it, make a story and tell. If people do not ask about it, draw their attention to it and tell. If people forget about it, remind them of it and keep telling. Do not talk about anything else. And so this was written in the summer of 1962. Um, and sorry, I don't know why I keep skipping. Oh, sorry. Another example is George Brecht. So this is another example. So 3 telephone events. When the telephone rings, it is allowed to continue ringing until it stops. When the telephone rings, the receiver is lifted, then replaced. When the telephone rings, it is answered. So these event scores are designed to show like how there are actions and experiences that are produced in everyday life. And a lot of times it's like, well, there is it kind of calls to the fact that there's like a body mind that participates in the creating of these experiences. And so these event scores are inspired by how like, oh, what if you were actually to like a music score your life? Like what would the instructions or the descriptions be for that? So that was another inspiration for my work in lyric games as well, and also a lot of other people's work. There's also so many other contemplative traditions that can factor into it. There, is guided meditations or monastic traditions. There is immersive environments. There is um, improvisation, and also clearly tabletop RPG games. The most famous one is known as Dungeons and Dragons, and there's also live action role play as well, which we'll get into later. But ultimately, I chose lyric games and many other, queer, trans, disabled, people of color, and in all those little gamuts of identity, um, are all it's all a way to confirm and support like how like we like want to see and perceive the world, and then putting those into instructions. There's a whole world of lyric games out there where people are creating great games around like grief or experiences or joy. And I'm happy to share, links and to talk about that more later, because it's such an expansive genre, and I think it's such a disability like affirming genre as well. Um, and it's also as a way to affirm cryptechnoscience, which is that cryptechnoscience, in short, is how disabled folks design their own worlds to basically affirm their own needs. And I consider lyric games as a form of cryptechnoscience in that way, especially for me. And I got motivated because I was struggling with trying to translate and express how I feel all the time as a disabled queer trans person of color, who's also neurodivergent. So with that explanation, it's time to play. So with that, this one is called a LARP. Sorry, this is kind of jargony, and then like the actual title. So LARP, live action role playing. It's a group game, and it's also a lyric game. So again, a lyric game is the catch-all term for this, and then I just put in LARP and group as another way to, and it will make more sense when we play. This one is called We Are Rocks. I wrote it for us today. So let's play this first and then we can talk about it after. So the title is called We Are Rocks, and I'm going to read the instructions. And you don't need your screens on or anything to participate in this. So this game is called We Are Rocks, and I'm going to read the instructions and we're going to play. So we are rocks. Lie back, sit comfortably in whatever position makes sense for you. Close your eyes and try to be as still as you can for 30 seconds. And so as you are lying back, I'm going to be reading the rest of this. Think about all the times you've ever felt bad for being still, for not doing things, in quotes. Ask yourself, why would a rock feel bad about that? A rock's point is to experience the passage of time and crystallize into a nice form, hanging out with the sun, the earth, the weather, the environment, animals, the sand, pavement, fireplaces, river rocks, mud mass, lava flows, the earth is bending. Ask yourself these questions. How would you like to move? Would you like to stay still? What would rest mean for you? And we're just gonna sit with that for a couple of minutes. So we're gonna come back at 2:45. Yeah. Okay. So it's 2:45. I'm wondering if if folks would like to share how they answered these questions and also what that experience is like for you. Sharing is optional. You're also welcome to say that you're still processing it. But I wanted to write this as both as a group introduction to a form of a lyric game. And the basis of why I wrote this came from a couple different places. I had a extremely bad silent migraine that coincided the same time with a deeply overcast day a couple of days ago. And it was so difficult that I couldn't move despite having so much work to do. and it hurt so bad. It hurt a lot. Um, and I was just like, I would rather be a rock right now, you know? So I think I'll be transparent. When I was preparing for this workshop, I came from such a hectic week. It was so difficult. And I was actually so anxious and stressed out preparing for this workshop. And then I thought to myself, okay, Iris, like the reason why you make these games and work about rest is because like you're trying so hard to like reclaim yourself because, you know, it has never been really good for me to prioritize all the guilt and shame and all of that like over like my own needs. And I think it's just really it's really important that like, you know, you're sharing that, and like it also is really validating because it's really difficult. There is so much outside pressure to make you be in ways and move in ways that you don't actually want to be in. Um, which is why we're rocks, because no, you just gotta exist. A rock is being. So I think especially as, disabled body, like, with our disabled body minds, like, um, and part of the reason why me claiming and naming that I'm disabled has been so powerful, um, is that like absolutely like our rest, like our leisure, our stillness, our desire to not move, our desires for like what we care for, so important, and is a really important part of who we are and like how we relate to each other. And I've started writing these games because um I've struggled for so many years, especially in my organizing background and in like struggling to find a creative practice that was accessible to me when I was like, too sick to like draw or move or do anything. I wanted to, self-validate my experience like in my body mind. Um, and so it's very meaningful for me to hear all this from, and to share this space with y'all and to talk about it. Because it reminds me of the original reason why I wrote these in the first place. And and to explain a little bit more about, how this writing process works is I think it's okay to, I think about what like like sorry, what Celia was talking about with like, the rock and the moss, like, I just feel like, within each of us there are memories and sensations and environments and sensory inputs and outputs and language that we all can express to each other, right? And I see lyric games as like an invitation for people to bring out and share what their, experiences are like, and, like it's a gift to share with each other.
Welcome back.
Hello. Hi, welcome back. I will say this. I think this is Iris talking. This might be the most relaxing workshop I've ever done. So thanks y'all for helping me make such a relaxing workshop. So thank you so much for being here. I'm gonna go into the next part, which is that we're gonna be playing a lyric game that I wrote, which is two lyric games actually in one, and was actually in also an art installation that I did. So I will share my screen. Okay, so um first, this is a little bit of backstory. So what is falling in getting out? It is a hack of Jian Shim's Pin Feather / Cloud Studies. It is a two-part lyric game, and I wrote it pre-pandemic in January 2020 after dealing with a very arduous and lengthy medical diagnosis process and desiring rest heavily. Um, I was in my first year of graduate school in my MFA program, And at the time that I shared and I wrote this, I initially wrote them as little half-page size games, and it also was inspired by Hiroshi Yoshimura's ambient album, Surround. And I will go into that more. At the time, my more able-bodied classmates and professors did not understand that I was radically pushing for rest for disabled bodies and body minds. But then the pandemic hit and they understood. LOL. Very sarcastically. And the album that I played, it basically is an ambient album using digital synthesizers to create water sounds. If I had more time, I would play this before we started playing, but I'll just send the link after in case y'all wanted to listen to it, if you want to play it again. So, um, basically this is the original version, which I also could send, if you're interested. And so it's a very small game. And then I then converted it, to these, 22 feet long scrolls that were essentially hanging off a very tall ceiling for my MFA group exhibition. And so they're made out of architecture paper, and you can basically what it is that I wanted to make the very personal, intimate experience of reading these games and playing them by yourself and with yourself, and putting it into a more public setting where it's like you can have a shared experience privately, but together with others in the space. And you're using your whole body, um, and to read it, while also noting the tactile nature of it. I also had QR alt text codes, which was a collaborative effort between me and two other collaborators, Sarah Kavar and Hannah Fakness, for those who wanted alt text access within the exhibition to read it as well. So what I'm going to do today is, in the interest of time, I am going to read this one, and then I'm going to read the second one. And then I would love to hear, or if y'all want to talk in the chat or again in microphone, how this experience was for you. And I can talk a little bit more later about where the story of word is coming from. So, falling in. You are by the edge of a pool after hours. There is no one around you, and the thrill of being caught creates little tingles in your spine. You step into the pool, lay back, then float, and look up at the night sky. The water lapping at the edges of your eardrums, the sound of your heartbeat in tandem with its movements. You close your eyes. Number 1. Open the webs of your fingers and feel the water pouring through them. How does the water feel on your skin? Number 2. Be still and listen to your breathing. Where and when does your breath struggle? When it doesn't? Number 3. Take a deep breath and try to see if you can locate how it travels through your body. How does the water press upon it? Number 4. Take a breath and dive in. How does it feel to be in the water? So to clarify, you read these in order. So 1 and 2, but then 3 and 4, like there are different ways of choosing how you take in being in the water. So so you could either play both or choose one. Okay, so this is Iris talking. So I will be moving to the next slide for the second part of the game, and then afterwards we will have a discussion about that. Something to note, the last time that I played this game, a player noted that the experience felt a little bit triggering for them. So, just want to have a reminder of, Rain being here as an active listener, making sure, to talk to Emily if this next experience might be too much and you may want to be moved to a breakout room or take a break. So just letting you know. So, the second one is called Getting Out. So this is chronologically right after falling in. It's time to go. You hear the sounds of people murmuring above you, and you submerge yourself in the water to escape capture. A light shines upon you, and you think you're done for, but the security officer goes, "No one's here." You open your eyes and rise up from the water. But when you reach to push your hair back, you see that your hand is transparent, the moonlight shining through the gelatinous form. While staring, the outline bursts, and your hand pours out and becomes one with the pool. Your water. Number 1, what's on your mind? Number 2, do you embrace it? Or do you freak out about your new form? If you embrace it, go to question 3. If you freak out, go to question 4. Question 3. Take a breath as the rest of you becomes water. How is the acceptance process for you? Again, so then for question 4, now question 4 says, you struggle. This is all too much. How does it feel to fight? To surrender? So I think a minute has passed, and I'm wondering if anybody would want to share what they thought as they were playing this. Maybe, what choice did you make? Did you embrace it? Did you freak out? What did this make you think of? Or feel free to like put in the chat or in like the microphone and stuff. So I wrote this during, I think, not when I was super new to disability justice, but definitely when I think actually it's funny, the way that you talked about it and how you felt like there wasn't much choice and that it was both this mixture of freaking out and stuff like that. That really is how I was feeling when I wrote it, especially with how my illnesses were working. Um, so it's interesting because a lot of times in game design, there's this idea that like, well, you really want to give like the player as much choice as possible. But like in this case, it's like in reality, when it comes to game design, it's the question is like, and this goes for, art and creating experiences in general is, what kind of experience do you want to share and that you want to, and that you want to express, right? And the fact is that there there were parameters that I was experiencing that I wanted people to understand. So, and you talking about the mixture between like embrace and freaking out and how it's messy. It's when I wrote it, I just really felt like I had to make that choice. But even now, me playing this years later, it's like, well, it's much more complicated than that. So thank you for also naming that as well and it being true to your experience, yourself as well. And Jessica saying it felt like finding the serenity in the chaos. acceptance is hard. You know, that like, yeah, like, I still find on a day-to-day basis, like, you know, I feel very grateful for disabled community and disability justice and being able to be in this space and to share space with y'all, because I think it helps me accept that my experience is real and that how we all express ourselves is real. But admittedly, like, you know, there's like so much chaos, and then how do we find that for ourselves? Yeah. um that's definitely a question, and how to find rest in it. Yeah, okay. So maybe would folks want to do like a, you know, one word checkout about, you know, today, and you know, what they thought? I guess my And also, if you had any additional thoughts or questions about lyric games or these experiences or other thoughts to share, feel free to share. If you would want to talk about it later, I'll share my email and my Instagram, and happy to talk with y'all later, if y'all want to continue talking about this. Also happy to, like, you know, share resources, or if you want to write your own lyric games, that would be super fun. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'll just add from our end that that we can continue some of this in the Slack, for the creative user Slack, which Iris is on, and I will send all of the joining information for that in the follow-up email. There will also be a survey that I would really appreciate if you all could fill out, because it really helps us to sort of figure out future programming. That's probably all of my uh, everything you need to hear from me and a thought.
sure. Um, yes, and yes, the Slack as well, obviously. But yes, so this is Iris talking. My name, uh, so my word is grateful. So thank you. I think we're done. Yeah.
Uh, Thanks. Bye. Have a lovely whatever time of day it is for you where you are. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.